So we have, as part of our nervous system, there's two parts, and this is part of our autonomic nervous system. And autonomic, we think that it does automatically, but we do have control over it with our breath. But sympathetic is our fight or flight. So we developed this part of our nervous system because we evolved around predators.
Hey Jake, how about for 30 seconds to a minute, you just talk us through that right now. So for anyone who's listening, they can actually try it out right this second and actually feel it, and I'll go along.
Close down your eyes and just start to feel the breath for just a couple breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth.
Today, I'm joined by Jake Whan, who is a breathwork coach, and no surprise, in this episode, we dive into all things breathwork related, explaining the difference between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, the different types of breathwork we could do to activate them, practices, routines, and more, as well as diving into some of the conversations that we love to have on this podcast around consciousness, psychedelics, and spirituality. Before we get started, if you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button, as it really does help out the channel. All right, that's it from me. I hope you enjoy this episode with Jake Whan. Jake Whan, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here, man. I've been looking forward to this. We were meant to do this back in June, and the universe happened, so it didn't quite happen then. But here we are now, and I've been looking forward to this because I've been feeling more and more drawn towards breathwork, which is one of the main reasons that I wanted to, have you on. And I found that as I've been going through the journey of doing the podcast, that, as I felt allured to certain things, to take more of a deep dive into it, there's now a beautiful opportunity to sort out an expert, have a conversation, and share it with, lots of other people to listen to. So
Yeah, it's beautiful that this is becoming more and more mainstream. More and more people are becoming knowledgeable about it, just because of how powerful the work is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would love for you to give an overview of what it is that you do. If someone said, "Hey, Jay, what is it you do?" for our listeners to have an understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a breathwork coach. That's really what I just describe myself as. But breathwork allows me to bring in other aspects of holistic health into it as well. But really what I do is I use breathwork to allow people to become their own healers as well as their own transformers. So I work with a lot of coaches, a lot of entrepreneurs, to release what they're holding onto inside so that they can receive all that they're meant for in this lifetime.
And what does that look like for anyone who, maybe some people might be familiar with breath work through, let's say, Wim Hof, but that might be their only reference.
Yeah, absolutely. So really the breath is more of a tool to go inside of yourself. So in our day and age, with social media, with all this stimulus that we have around us, we're constantly up in our minds, constantly in comparison. There's that voice inside your head that's constantly talking. Breathwork allows us to get out of that. So I do long sessions with the people that I work with and in groups that are an hour and a half, where it's deep dive into breathwork. And what breathwork allows you to do is, so when we're talking right now, we're in a state of mind that is different than what we get into in a breathwork session. It's an unconventional state of consciousness. So we are able to process the past, the present, and the future all here in the right now. So we're letting go of those past things that we hold on to that get stored in our nervous system. We're able to process them in the present so that they no longer have to be held inside, so that going into our future, we don't have to let our past hold us back from what we create moving forward. That's really what a breathwork session allows us to do, is just look inside, see what we're holding on to. This could be a childhood trauma. It could be something that happened to you as a teenager, being bullied, abuse. All these things get stored within us. in a breathwork session, we can let those things go so that I don't have scarcity holding me back. I don't have fear holding me back. I don't have unworthiness holding me back. We're letting go of emotions inside so that we can bring into our lives what we want.
It's amazing how intricate and complex the body is, the nervous system is, and how actually we seem to have this innate built-in tool that can allow for the facilitation of that process. And of course, there's the spoken therapy, which I think can be wonderful for people to have an understanding at the level of the mind. But going beyond that, I think some of the integration work that can be done with breath work, do you find that as you lead people through it, just there's something within them intrinsically and unconsciously that almost knows what to do once the breath is activated?
Yes, it's a very beautiful process to watch. So when I go into sessions with my clients or in a group, I'll describe the breath, and you can kind of see people start to like get a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit worried, a little bit anxious. And then I lead them into a meditation that allows them to get like very centered. And then within the first round of the breath that we do, it's like big in through the mouth, out through the mouth, similar to Wim Hof, but into the diaphragm. And within 30 seconds to a minute, people are already into this other state of mind. And I watch it happen. I see the mind just kind of start to fade away, and then just them starting to go within themselves. And it is like a trigger just flips. The switch flips, and their body just knows, like, it's because they're actually getting out of their mind for the first time, and the body starts to wake up, and it's like, hey, okay, I'm gonna answer this call now. So it is a beautiful process to go through, and there's a reason that we have this breath. It connects everything. In Buddhist culture, the breath is called the spirit, and it's because it connects every single thing together. So it's the first thing that we do when we're born. It's the last thing we do before we die, and it connects everything in between is our breath. So it is like awakening the spirit within us when we go into breath work.
Just a quick one for 30 seconds. I really hope you're loving this episode. And if you enjoy conversations like this around self-exploration, diving into some of the deeper meanings of life and what it is to be human, then I would like to invite you to a group call that I host every single Thursday completely for free. It's called Finding Freedom. And in those conversations, we dive into different themes and topics around consciousness, spirituality, why we show up the way that we do, some of the difficulties that we can experience whilst on this spiritual path or this path of deeper exploration. So if that calls out to you, hit the link in the description or the show notes, and you can register to join that call. And it's just a beautiful space for like-minded people to get together and share some of this journey of self-exploration. All right, that's it from me. Let's get back into it. Yeah. Are you aware of like, or do you have an explanation for what is going on, like kind of within the body as we're doing breath work and as we start to go from one state into a very apparent different state? Do you understand the kind of the mechanism that's taking place?
Yes. So what we're doing is we're stimulating the sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system in your everyday life is your fight or flight system. But when we go into a breathwork session, we're stimulating it in a different way. So when we do this, the mind starts to turn off, and we stimulate a chemical inside of us, a neurochemical called DMT. So you might think of DMT as something that comes from like LSD or something like that. And so to give a little bit more context, Stan Grof was the inventor of holotropic breathwork. And he was doing clinical trials with patients for PTSD with LSD. And it stimulated DMT, and they were starting to overcome their PTSD, depression, things like that. they stopped doing those trials with it, like they cut that out. They made it illegal. So he developed holotropic breathwork and was getting people to the same place that LSD was. Because when we go into these deep breaths, we stimulate that, we hold DMT in our lungs. There's no coincidence to that. So we're actually stimulating that. We're stimulating our nervous system through that. It starts to turn off the thinking brain, and it instead we start to go into our bodies, and we are emotional beings. So our nervous system is in turn tied with our emotions. Then we start to stimulate emotions, which allows us to feel certain things. When we feel certain things, being emotional beings, then we are able to release them. If you look at like there's this really great video of a polar bear after people in a helicopter were trying to tranquilize it. Once they tranquilized it, you can see the polar bear shake, and it's releasing trauma within them. So that's the same thing that we do in a breathwork session. We're just not taught how to do that. We're stimulating the nervous system to release. And that's why this work is just so powerful. It's because in our day and age, we aren't taught how to be able to feel our emotions. And in a breathwork session, that is when we get to feel them, because the mind shuts off. It's not like the mind isn't somebody cuts you off at an intersection and then you're pissed off and the mind just goes. Instead, it's, okay, this person cut me off. I'm pissed off. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to express it so I don't have to hold it inside of myself any longer.
Amazing, yeah, because I think maybe people don't realize how many things that we encounter we actually store in the body.
Yes.
And when we try to think about the things, we've got a huge bias around the thoughts that we have, because we have these habitual patterns of thought. So it can be very difficult to make sense of the things that we're storing in the body with a mind that's kind of just in a habitual state of having certain thoughts. So I think sometimes when we're doing like kind of spoken therapy, our mind can almost divert us a little, maybe away from going into the thing, which leads me to a question. Do you find that people, when they're kind of getting close to that point of almost like breaking through or breaking in, is there like a resistance where there's almost like I'm not sure, I want to keep going?
Yes. That happens so many times with people that I do this work with their first couple of times. There's some people that will just go right in. They'll surrender, they'll break through and go in. But yes, because the ego comes in and it's like, no, this isn't comfortable for us. Let's stay in comfort, because the ego is trying to always keep us alive. So if we have to feel a really dark, deep emotion, the ego is going to come in and be like, no, let's stay away from that. That's scary. Let's not do that. And a lot of people are run by their egos. So they think that that is them. They think the egoic voice is them. So they won't go to that point. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to feel that. So that is something that I say at the beginning of every single session, especially in a group setting, is like, when those really uncomfortable, fearful things start to come up, they start to show themselves. If you hold yourself back, as we do in a society, we're not giving permission to every other person to release, to let go. They're going to feel that energy. They're going to hold back. So that's something I say is like, let's give each other permission to start to feel our emotions, so that we all don't have to be held back any longer. But that is a huge thing, is that people will hold themselves back because of judgment, because of fear, because the ego runs them. So we have to like get through that point, surrender a bit, because what lies on the other side is really freaking amazing.
Yeah, it's are you aware of internal family systems, like the therapy model?
Yes.
Yeah, so actually, interestingly, Aubrey just released a podcast episode today with Richard Schwartz, who's the founder, and he's involved with the the Center of Integral Wisdom, which I was just telling you about. That's why I was in Vermont. And just listened to a little bit of the podcast earlier today. The idea of the parts that we have in us, one of the parts being the protector. And I imagine there's almost that part of us, the protector, which doesn't want us to go into some of those traumas that we have stuffed way down deep, because actually there's a reason we've stuffed it down deep, and there's a reason we don't want to face it, and there's a reason we kind of want to sweep it under the rug or hide it and not deal with it. So I can imagine that there's this interesting point where, as you're about to break through to it, there's part of the body, maybe the protector, saying, stop, no, we don't want to do this, don't do it.
Yeah, that comes through. And it's like, if you're somebody that strongly identifies with those voices, then you're probably not going to be able to break through that. And that's why, like, just getting into this work a little bit so that you become more present and more conscious of, like, what do you identify with? This morning I was on my walk, like, listening to The Untethered Soul for like my 10th time. And I love the first couple of chapters, and I think it's like chapter 2. He talks about, if I asked you the question of who are you, how would you answer? At first, you would probably say, like, my name, Sally Smith. And then, no, like, you're just letters put together. No, that's not who you truly are. So then you might go into, like, well, I do this for a living and I've experienced this, but you weren't always that person experiencing that. So, like, who are you? And so it is like this deep dive into yourself. The less you can identify with your thoughts, with the protector, with the ego, and you come back to yourself, then it's like, okay, I can feel any emotion. I know that it's not who I am. That's a big thing. Is we'll go through life, I'm an angry person, I'm an anxious person. No, you're just a human body experiencing anger. That's not who you actually are. So the less that we can identify with our thoughts or the protector or the ego, then we can really start to feel these things so that we don't have to hold on to them anymore.
Sure. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of anytime I've been ayahuasca and I come to the point of taking the second cup. It's like when there's offering for the second serving, and it's not just a resistance to it in my mind. As I take the cup to my mouth, I almost immediately want to heave, and it's like my body's saying, just don't do it, because if you have this one, there's no coming back.
Yeah, I've had those same exact experiences. I think plant medicine has been the biggest teacher for myself for surrender. It, like, when you have a extremely intense ayahuasca or psilocybin experience, like, if you don't surrender, it's gonna mess you up. So, and it's like surrender to a whole nother level. I think that is what helped me so much in my own personal breathwork experiences. And now what I teach with people is what has come from plant medicine. Because I know what you're talking about. The first time that I did it, I didn't know too much about it. And I did 3 cups and like 3.5. And it just, I was sent.
Yeah. I remember my very first journey, which was over 7 years ago now. One of the things that happened quite early on, after the kind of kaleidoscopic visuals, then I started to get the real visuals, and there's these 2 demonic entities that kind of entered the room, and whether my eyes were open or closed, they're still there. And I just thought, okay, like, I was a lifelong martial artist, and I owned a martial arts school for years, and kind of one of my natural go-tos would be, okay, I guess we've got to fight. So there's these 2 demonic entities. I said, okay, I guess we've got to fight. Then all of a sudden it was like, bam, and we're in this, like, kind of arena to fight. And just as I'm kind of preparing myself, I looked closer, And I just noticed that these things that appeared to be demonic, it was actually their pain. And it
Mm,
wasn't that they were evil, it was a visual representation of the pain that they'd felt. And then I had this awareness of, oh, what they need is love.
mm,
And in that moment, when I realized, because of course, what wants to fight them is the ego. It's the ego that wants to fight. And I believe if I had stayed in that framing from the ego, it probably would have got pretty tough. But
mhm,
the moment I realized, I went from ego to love, and I said, oh no, these things need love. I then offered them love, and they just went, and
mm,
they just faded away.
mm.
Um,
That's a
but I felt
beautiful
like there was
experience.
a really powerful kind of,
Mm,
and that was probably within the first half an hour of my first journey 7 years ago. And that was a really powerful lesson, which was when you let go of the ego, like if you're coming from ego, there's that resistance.
mm,
It's going to get a whole lot worse. And the moment I switched to love, it was just went away.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's one of the biggest takeaways from any ceremony, any journey that I've had is like love is the highest vibration, the highest frequency, and love transmutes all. That's one of the things during one of my psilocybin ceremonies. I was like, why are we here? What am I here to teach? What is it? And it was just love, 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 love. And I was like, okay, I understand now. I get it.
Yeah, yeah. That was another thing that came up for me when seeing the pain. It kind of said to me, this pain, or what appears to be demonic, it is their pain, and the reason it's showing up as this is because the pain was created anytime they needed to receive love but didn't.
Mm,
So the thing that they needed at the time was love, and they didn't get it, and that's what created the pain. And it was the ultimate currency we have is love. So whenever you see someone behaving in a way that's, let's say, questionable, it's probably a representation of a time they didn't receive the love that they needed.
that's powerful.
Yeah.
That is powerful. That's like 99% of children who are now adults
Yeah.
just carrying pain because they weren't given love. I know that was for me too.
Yeah. Yeah. What, in fact, that kind of leads me on nicely. What was it that
Mm.
got you into exploring the realms of breath work as a modality?
Absolutely. Good question. Yeah, and so like a little bit backstory about me. I grew up in Rhode Island, the small state in the U.S. And from the moment I was 4 years old, I was obsessed with American football, and so that is what I dedicated my life towards growing up. My dad was a football player. My grandpa was a football player. My other grandpa was like at every single game, just like on me. And so I grew up in a nice place, but in a place where I was never able to feel my emotions. Like I was told to just suck it up over and over again. And I was so growing up, I was the best player in Rhode Island. So like I was the kid that was going to make it out of Rhode Island, go to play professionally. So like that was the pressure on me growing up. Um, and then that brought me towards high school and college, where I just dealt with injury after injury after injury after injury. I like could not finish a season. So that put me into a place of I would numb myself, especially in college, with girls, with alcohol, with partying, just to numb myself. And then I graduated and I went through another thing. I was trying to numb myself with a woman and got into a relationship, and she came from like drug abuse, and I got involved in that, and I got manipulated by somebody that was like my brother, who was my boss, and that just put me in a really deep dark place. um, like depression, anxiety, numbing myself over and over again. And it ultimately led me to a place like 2 years ago where I just didn't want to be on the earth anymore. And thankfully I like got connected with a life coach who I started talking to. He started helping me like really speak my truth, because I always know I knew I had so much to share with the world. I just didn't know how. And he really helped me. And he led me to one of my mentors who started to teach me breath work. And then he led me to two people that I'm super close with that led me into my first plant medicine, my first Bufo experience. And that Bufo experience, like, I was never the same person after that day. And so that led me down further in my plant medicine ceremony. And when I did ayahuasca for the first time, the medicine first taught me that I was a part of something so much bigger. It taught me how everything is love, everything is energy. And the way that we can tap into that is through breath work. And I was thinking about going to a certification in Arizona. And it specifically told me during that, go to Arizona, go get your certification. And then I went to get my certification, and we did some like really powerful breath work there. And during the session, I was like, I remember just like screaming like a lion, just letting out everything that was holding me back for so long. And at the end of it, there was an entity that came down and like put its hand on me, and it was just breathing. And it was breathing into me. And it was like, you will lead with the breath. You will lead with the breath. You will lead with the breath. And after that, like, breath work became my main thing.
Wow. Incredible, man. What a story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool how it's all happened.
Yeah. And do you find that breath work can be akin to a psychedelic experience?
100%. Some of my breath work journeys have been more powerful than ayahuasca, than psilocybin. Like, they have been completely transformative for me. And because, yeah, you are stimulating the same DMT that you have inside of you that you are with plant medicine. So you can go like deep and get to the same exact place.
Incredible. What are some of the barriers that people might have, or like resistance to trying breath work?
A lot of the time, it's just not the knowledge about it. Like, why would I sit and just focus on my breath? It seems like something kind of woo-woo to do. So that's kind of like surface level. And then a lot of the time, it's because people are just so anxious that the thought of sitting with themselves for 5 to 10 minutes or an hour, like, is so uncomfortable and is so fearful for them. To like, I actually have to sit with myself and start to feel my emotions. Like, that's the scariest thing that I could do.
Yeah.
And so that is typically the biggest barrier that I will hear, is like, I can't sit still for 5 minutes. I can't sit still for 10 minutes.
Sure.
And so oftentimes with the clients that I work with, the thing that we do is we find the path of least resistance. And so I will have them wake up in the morning, go to the bathroom, and then immediately go into just like 3 minutes of breath work, which is just literally focusing on your breath moving in through your nose and out through your mouth for 3 minutes. And then once you do that, or even start with like a minute, once you do that, it's like, okay, I did this. I can do 3. I can do 5. I can work myself up. And then you realize that it's not so scary. And then you just notice in your day, just having a little bit more presence brings so much more peace to your days. Like, if that person does cut you off at the intersection, it's not like an immediate like, ah, it gives you a split second where it's like, we can make a different decision than what we have done for so long. It gives you that split second of presence. So that, like, the biggest barrier is I'm scared to sit with myself. But as you start to do it just a little bit more, you start to notice the feelings that you've been searching for so long start to come, and that's where it starts to stick.
Yeah, got it.
Mm.
And I guess, like you said, you do some sessions that are an hour or an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a minimum effective dose where if somebody just wanted to hit up, I know you said there you could get someone starting with 3 minutes, but let's say someone is experiencing a little kind of turbulence inside, maybe they're experiencing a little tightness in the body, maybe some feelings around stress or anxiety. Is there like a minimum effective dose that they could do, which is just enough to kind of almost bring them out of it
Mm-hmm.
and not be kind of lost in either in those feelings or in the minds?
Yeah, the what I love for that, just like something that you can do really quickly, is Andrew Weil developed it. It's the 4-7-8 method. So it's an inhale through your nose for 4 seconds, you hold at the top for 7, and then you exhale for 8. And you do that for 4 to 5 breaths. And you immediately start to feel a difference, because what you're doing during that time is you are taking yourself from a sympathetic state. So let's say like you're going through the day, you're at work, and you just feel really anxious. Well, you're probably breathing up in your chest. You might even be holding your breath. So if you become conscious with your breath for 30 seconds to a minute, just doing the 4-7-8, you're going to take yourself from this very sympathetic, stressed out state, and then you'll be able to focus on your breath. So your breath starts to go from your chest down into your diaphragm, which will immediately take you out of that fight or flight state and more into a parasympathetic rest and recover state. So it can be as simple as the 4-7-8 method for 5 rounds.
Yeah, brilliant. And I guess just the act of having to count the numbers in the head for the length of the breath almost kind of pulls you out of some of the thought as well.
Yeah. It's like a double whammy with that. Like you're taking your thoughts away from work, stress, kids, money, and just coming back to just in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. And it puts you into a state of like, okay, I can get through this. I'm going to be okay.
So this is like the opposite of the breathwork sessions we described early on, which is actually a way of entering the sympathetic nervous system in a controlled manner. This is to take us into a parasympathetic. And for the listeners, because sometimes it's a little confusing. I think people often think sympathetic nervous system, sympathetic they assume with maybe calm and relaxed, and parasympathetic with the opposite. But could you maybe offer a little clarity for people that might not be familiar with the terms?
Yeah, so we have as part of our nervous system, there's 2 parts, and this is part of our autonomic nervous system. And autonomic, we think that it does automatically, but we do have control over it with our breath. But sympathetic is our fight or flight. So we developed this part of our nervous system because we evolved around predators and we were prey. So when we were going on hunts, if a lion tried to attack us, basically what the sympathetic nervous system does is it puts you into fight or flight. So you're ready to fight the tiger, you're ready to run away. And it shuts off all unneeded organs and energy systems. So that's why a lot of stressed out people have really bad gut issues, because it stops the flow of blood to your internal organs and sends it up more towards your brain and towards your muscles. So that's what the sympathetic nervous system does. The parasympathetic is the rest, recover, rest and digest energy system. It puts you into a state where this is like when you go into sleep, you're more there. When you're nice and calm, when you're meditating, when you're in a really calm breathwork session, this is the state that you go into. It's like that place of ease and peace. And we want to have a balance between these throughout our days. Just in our current society, we are much more sympathetic fight or flight, than we are parasympathetic, rest and relax.
Yeah, thank you for that, man. And of course, the sympathetic nervous system, like you say, we often do spend a lot of time there because now we interpret things that aren't life or death situations, that aren't fight or flight situations, we actually interpret them as being. Yeah.
Yes.
If someone comments on your Instagram post with a comment that isn't polite or friendly, some people literally have that sympathetic nervous system response where they feel like they're being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger.
Yes, they do. Yeah, and it's just because of the society that we have evolved in now and evolved into, is that it's constant stimulation, it's constant fear. So you turn on the news, it's just fear, fear, fear. And you open up your phone puts you into a sympathetic state because everything's trying to grab at your attention. And so we live in that state, and that's why we are so quick to react. So yes, somebody's Instagram post puts you into a fight or flight state. Like, you're ready to go at the person, even though it's through a screen and you don't know who they are. Like, we just are so quick to be in that state. And it's just because we are living in a sympathetic state, because that is what society has put us into.
Yeah.
So if we can become conscious about that and use practices that put us into a parasympathetic state, then those little things that really serve no purpose and should not get us as angry as they do, they don't have to put us into that state so often anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the nice things about being able to use breath to put us into a parasympathetic nervous system to actually calm and relax is that the thoughts we have are also very different when we're calm and relaxed compared to the thoughts that we have when we're in that stress state. And sometimes we're trying to kind of solve a problem. It's kind of, you can't solve a problem from the paradigm in which it was created. And very often people are trying to think about how to solve an issue whilst they're in that stress state, and that issue is surrounding stress. It's very hard to solve your issue of being stressed whilst you're in a stress state.
Yeah, it's anybody listening to this, I would recommend the next time that you feel you're in a stressed out state, and before trying to make a decision from that place, like, uh, have us in your mind now, like, remember this conversation of, like, go into just 30 seconds, a minute of breath work, then see how you feel afterwards. You'll probably have a completely different state of mind about the situation than you did when you're in a stressed out state.
Hey, Jake, how about for 30 seconds to a minute, you just talk us through that right now? So for anyone who's listening, they can actually try it out right this second
Yeah.
and actually feel it. And I'll go along.
Okay, absolutely. So right now, I'm just going to ask you to close down your eyes and just start to feel the breath for just a couple breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Just feel the flow of the air as it moves in through your nostrils, and feel the flow of the air as it moves out through your mouth. Just feel the sensation of the breath. Feel the coolness as it moves into your nose, and feel the warmness as it flows out. Good. And now we're going to go into breaths for 4 seconds in, a 7-second hold, and 8 seconds out. Let that current breath fall out. Now inhale. 3, 2, 1, hold. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let it out. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, breathe in. 3, 2, 1, hold. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice. Exhale. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more. In. 3, 2, 1. hold. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now let it all fall out. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beautiful. You can go ahead and open up those eyes. How do you feel?
By the end of it, I started to notice that my awareness of where I was and my surroundings started to dissipate as I started to enter more and more into the vastness of my interior. And yeah, it's pretty relaxed immediately. And whilst I could hear you, it was almost just the awareness of air and anything else just started to go, which is incredible when you think, about a minute when we might be stressed about things that are going on and our mind is fully in this horizontal dimension of time, of past, of future, of things we need to do. That in about a minute we can enter into this deep vertical dimension of stillness where all of that just vanishes.
Yes. And imagine now if you do that each day, like you start your morning with that, you start to find that presence each day. You're going to have so much presence and awareness as you go throughout the day. Because, yeah, it is so beautiful how we have this awareness around us and so much stimulus. And then we close our eyes, we focus on our breath, we start to become aware of within. And then our body's like, oh, hey, it's about time. I've been waiting for you to do this for years. Like, hey, now we can establish this connection, which allows us as we go throughout our days to have a more beautiful sense of awareness.
Yeah, amazing, brother. Thank you for talking us through that.
Yeah, of course.
Something I was actually talking to one of my a coaching client. I tend not to use it. I find the words sometimes, I feel like a lot of the people that I do work with, I feel like when I call them a client, it kind of separates the connection we have because actually it's really quite deep and intimate and very special. But I was talking about the vastness of what we are internally, and that's what I find breath can connect me to. And a way to consider it, if we imagine like an astronaut in space in the vastness of the universe, I believe we can find the same vastness internally. As, for example, when we do a psychedelic experience, when we do, DMT and you have that full breakthrough and it feels like you enter into the entire universe, but it's that entire universe within. And what I found is when experiencing a difficult emotion, sometimes we can feel consumed by that one emotion. And I find if I connect to my breath and go inward into the vastness, I can almost imagine being like an astronaut inside myself. Now, in that infinite vastness, that emotion that I'm feeling that was consuming me, I now make space for it to exist, but not just in this small container. All of a sudden, I'll become an infinite container where I can almost say, hey, there's stress, let's just let it go there. And I can, rather than holding it like this, I can hold it in a space that's infinite. And that's only something I kind of just stumbled across this kind of, I guess, idea just when I was doing a little breath work. And I'm not as much of a breathwork practitioner as I would like to be, and I really enjoy it. It's one of those things, also like yoga, that I absolutely love. And then I often find myself saying, why do I do it consistently? But that's what I find. It almost takes me into this kind of vast, expansive space within, where there then becomes a whole load of space for things to exist, where it's not all consuming.
Yeah, you're separating yourself from the emotion, realizing that the emotion is not yours to hold, that you're just experiencing the emotion as your true self. So your true self experiencing an emotion, and then you can ultimately allow yourself to not hold that within. So you're making the decision in that time, I'm not going to allow my body to internally hold on to this. I am going to instead let it go. And it's a beautiful, it reminds me of, I just watched, have you seen Interstellar?
No.
Okay, Interstellar is a really good movie with Andrew McConaughey, and it like really breaks down just the different dimensions and like the illusion of time, and that's what it had me thinking about, was like seeing this universe within yourself, and it is pretty remarkable because like our brains and the neurons in our brain look exactly like the universe. Our lungs look like tree roots. So it is like you have that universe within you. It's we are just a spiritual being having a human experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's any kind of coincidence at all that these patterns are repeated throughout everything. You know,
Mm.
the question, where were you at the time of the Big Bang, is an interesting one.
That
And
is interesting.
where were you at the time of the Big Bang? And I think the answer is you were there.
Hmm.
You were you
Yeah.
you were actually there in the how it just then continued. It came from that fingernail size explosion that continued to expand and expand and expand, and then morph and replicate and go from subatomic
Mm.
particles to atomic particles to,
Mm.
you know, how everything just kind of, but it all came from that one kind of source of consciousness that has this deep desire
Mm.
to expand and to
Mm.
experience. And yeah, so it makes sense to me that all the patterns that we see in the universe and in nature, that would go through us because we're from the same
Hmm.
source point.
Yeah, we're all from the same thing.
Mm.
And and it is really powerful when we establish a connection with nature more, because we come from the same thing. We establish and we realize like we are all one, we are all connected. And yeah, from like the Big Bang, we definitely were there, and we've just evolved because we have this constant evolution, this constant growth. We want to grow. That is why we seek more. We seek more experiences. We want to grow. So we are just constantly evolving and constantly changing. And yeah, that's a beautiful part about life, is like you'll find yourself with connected with nature more and more, like as you go within, and realize that you are a part of everything, and everything is a part of you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I've been pretty deep in some of the Dharma that Dr. Mark Gaffney teaches, and some really profound and incredible stuff, especially around the idea of unique self, which
Mm.
is there's the separate self, which is what a lot of the West is kind of based on. A lot of the kind of the Western like psychotherapeutic model is separate self.
Mm.
And then in the East, they say, no, you aren't this separate individual. You know, this kind of like reductionist idea. No, your true self is you're connected to all and
Mm.
everything, and
Mm.
you're part of the field of value. And then what Mark talks about with the idea of unique self is you're actually both. You are part of the field, you are part of the all that is, but as a unique expression, as an irreducibly unique expression of the love intelligence of the all that is showing up in a way that has never been seen before and will never be seen again. And as such, you have a unique expression, you have a unique perspective, a unique point of view, a unique gift that only you can give. And you know, one of the things that he said to me, which blew my head off, is that, you know, we all fall out of our fullness and our kind of truest expression. You know, we go through traumatic experiences and things happen where we fall out of our fullness. And he said this to me on the podcast, and I was almost trying not to. I was actually holding tears back when he said this. He said, "But to the precise extent that you re-step back into your fullness, and you allow your entirety to to be seen and to be expressed into the world, then the infinite intimate, which is what he calls God, is sees you and will see itself. And to the extent that you allow yourself to be fully expressed the way the divine intended, is to the extent that you allow there to be more God in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah. That is, it's just so beautiful and true. Oh, sorry for the dog outside.
Oh, good. Good.
That is Layla, if anybody can hear her. She likes to bark at people outside. But yes, and one of the points that I want to hit there is that your unique gift, and like we are one of one. There's never going to be another Jake Whan. There's never going to be another Sabri. And I said your name correct, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Like there's never going to be another one of us, and so we do have this unique gift inside of us. And the 7 spiritual laws of success talks about this, is that we have this unique gift, and it is this remembering that we go through in the traumas of life and the hardships. It's all a part of our remembering of that fullness that we have within ourselves. And the more we start to tap into that, we express our unique gifts to the world, because we are the only person that can express the gift that we have within us. We are the only one, and we do it in a unique way, as opposed to every other single person who also has their unique gift. And when we express that, that is when we open up ourselves to abundance, to the love and the joy and everything in our lives. That is when we fully allow ourselves to resonate on such a high frequency and high vibration, because we are sharing our unique gift, that we, and therefore, get into this beautiful flow of the universe of giving and receiving.
And I think this is where sometimes people miss the point of, when I think a lot of the new age idea about how we manifest things, and they try to think, what does my ego want very often? What does my ego want? And it's like, oh, why is it not getting it? And actually, I think it's when we align with that truest, most unique expression of who we are, and we access that unique gift. Because actually, again, to kind of quote Mark, we all have a unique responsibility to share that gift, because you're actually intended by reality. You weren't a mistake. You were intended the way you are. You were intended by reality, and no one else can share the gift that you have. So you actually have a responsibility to share it, and that contributes to what he refers to as the symphony. The symphony. We can't be a single note. Is the symphonic kind of orchestra of the universe, where there's all these different notes that need to be played and expressed, and we are them.
Yeah, it is our responsibility to do the work that is needed to find what that unique expression is for ourselves. Like that is our responsibility. And imagine if everybody starts doing the deep work that's taking them away from their unique gift, and everybody started sharing your unique gift, what type of world we would live in.
Yeah.
Like that would be beautiful.
And Jake, I'll share this with you, and I've not really touched on it on the podcast yet, because some of it's happened. I think it's been maybe 4 weeks since I've had a show with a guest on, just because I've been so busy. But it was only November last year that I sat in nature, and I feel like I have quite a strong connection to an external voice from me that I've kind of experienced during the ayahuasca ceremonies. And it was only November, and I've shared this before, but I kind of asked, what do you want from me? Rather than what do I want from life, what does life want from me? And it came through as like, what you're meant to be doing. You've been putting it off for many years. I've kind of dabbled in coaching before, and I've always just had this natural, to be honest, from a young age, really, I was fell into this role, and I don't think it's the first life that I've done it in. And I was told, as long as you show up fully for everybody to see, the right people will come into your life and things will happen faster than you could possibly imagine. Now, with that, and this is important for people to understand, that it sounds simple, but there's a risk. There's actually a risk of being seen fully, because most of us have been afraid of that for a lot of our lives. And it's not been safe for some people to be seen fully. So there's a risk there, but on the other side of that risk, a bit like the breakthrough from the breath work, on the other side of that is where I believe all the magic happens. And for this year, what's happened for me, so I started the podcast in January and started kind of my social media, my Instagram in January. And since then, I've been invited to Peru with Maestro Hamilton Souther to join him there. I was offered a scholarship with Eckhart Tolle to become a teacher of presence. I was invited to Vermont with Dr. Mark Gaffney to what is becoming the Centre of World Philosophy and Religion. Aubrey Marcus is just going on as the board chair, and I was invited to join the board. And just before I went to Vermont, I was asked to be an associate producer for a docuseries that has some really huge names on and luminaries that I can't talk about quite yet, but people absolutely would have heard of. And it's just wild how that has unfolded in the way I was told it would. And as I sat in Vermont 2 weeks ago there with, Dr. Zach Stein and all these people that are just incredible in the space, and I sat there thinking, literally 6 months ago, I didn't know any of this was going to happen. Not a single thing. And I just did as what came through for me, and just how it's played out has been. I said this year was going to. I wrote it down in this at the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year, it's a pretty cool journal, right?
Yeah.
And I said, this is going to be the year of magic and miracles. And it really has kind of played out that way. And one more kind of interesting story that, sometimes the universe gives us a wink. As I was going to Vermont, I got to the check-in desk here in the UK, and I'd had some busy days leading up there. Got to the check-in desk, and the guy said to me, "Have you got your visa?" I said, "No." And he said, "Oh, you need one." And I just thought about the different times I've been in the past to the States, and I was thinking, I'm sure I've never done that before. And then I was like, oh yeah, I have. Yeah. Oh yeah. You're right, I do need one.
Yeah.
So he said, you can fill one out now online, but it takes up to 72 hours, and the check-in desk is closing in 45 minutes. So the day before, I'd actually had a migraine, which I've not had in years, and it wiped me out for like 5 hours. I was incapacitated. So I went, sat down, go, okay, I've got 45 minutes to do this. And I start to fill out this visa, and I start to get a migraine. And I was like, oh no, it's looking likely that I'm going to miss my flight, and then I'm going to be in the airport with a migraine. That's going to wipe me out. This sucks. So I fill it all out, then I can't figure out where to hit the button to pay. It's not coming up anywhere. So I go back over. I was like, hey man, can you help me out with this, please? I'm getting a migraine and I'm struggling. And he went, oh, I get migraines. I've got some migraine tablets. Do you want some? And I said, oh man, that'd be amazing. So he gets them out and he gives them to me, and I've got no water. And then there's a desk next to him, which is just empty, and there's just a small bottle of water that's full, just sat there. It's almost like, a video game where it's like, guess that's for me. So I'll take the water, take the tablets. He helps me out. We complete it. And say, we close in 45 minutes, basically. So I go to sit down, keep hitting refresh, pending. No emails are coming through. And we, maybe 5 minutes before, the woman comes over and she's like, hey, let's try a passport. No, nothing's come through. And it gets then to the point where they're about to close. And she said, have you had an email through yet? I said, no, I haven't. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I was like, oh, good. She's like, let's just try your passport one more time. And she goes and she scans it. And she said, have you had an email come through? Checked. No email. And she said, I think it might have gone through. And then she checked all the names and she went, this is a miracle. I've never seen this before. And it literally, on the minute that they were going to close, it came through. Got my tickets, closed the desk, and then the email then came through 2 minutes after. Literally,
Wow.
it was 1:32 p.m. They were closing at 1:30, and I went straight through. And it just felt like when I was told, hey, the right people are going to come into your life, you're going to end up in the right places. And even this thing that was like, it seemed as though I wasn't going to end up there. And the fact the woman said, it's a miracle, I was just like, all right. Magic and
I
miracles.
get it. I get it.
Yeah. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, we're always divinely guided when we just choose to listen.
Yeah. And there's a point that I missed out there. I actually sat down and I kind of tuned in and I just said, I really believe I'm meant to be going to this. And I believe that I'll be able to contribute to the world better because of it. But if there's a wisdom at play here that knows better than I do, and I'm not meant to be there, I surrender. And I just fully let go and just trusted that the right thing would happen. So pretty powerful.
It's beautiful. It is powerful stuff. Yeah. Surrendering is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And there's a beautiful paradox in the idea that surrender is powerful.
It is powerful. Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I have learned from, or one of the biggest is from breathwork, from plant medicine, from life, is like just surrender. There's a great book by Michael Singer called the Surrender Experiment. And it's just his whole life just talking about how much he surrendered. And just as your experience, like every person, every single thing, every beautiful, magical miracle that life can bring can come to us when we just surrender.
Yeah, absolutely. For people that are listening now, I know we've just to kind of like tie the loop back to the breath work. We've talked about different ones, the long sessions, the the practice of 3 minutes and then adding a bit more, the practice for the activating parasympathetic, the practice for getting into sympathetic and calming themselves down, the 4-7-8 practice they can do for just a minute that we got to experience here. Do you have or recommend like a daily practice, an amount of time that someone can do? And then also that's maybe like a micro daily practice. So that part one and part two. And then do you have a suggestion for how often people could be doing like a breath work to activate sympathetic nervous system?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. To start out, I do just recommend like a 3-minute to 5-minute practice when you're just starting out. Like wake up in the morning, go to the bathroom, find a comfortable position, sit up nice and straight, go right into the breath and start with that. And when you're doing that, just focus breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. And as the mind tries to come in, just become aware of it and then get back to the breath. Do that at first. And when you feel like you've gotten a really good handle on it, I typically give my clients and the people I work with a 15-minute daily practice. And that practice is 5 minutes of in through the mouth, out through the mouth. Big diaphragmatic breaths, in and out. Like little space in between it. If you've seen Wim Hof, it's similar to that. So 5 minutes of that, and then 5 minutes in through the nose, out through the mouth. So we are stimulating the sympathetic to just release any stored tension, any stored energy. Then we're going into a really nice, beautiful state in through the nose, out through the mouth. And during this time, you can start to think about like, or allow to come to you, what do I want for my day? What do I want to go into my day? What's my intention for today? Is it better connections, more love? Is it just presence with myself? So 5 minutes of that, and then just 5 minutes of just breathing normally. Just because once you've gone through this, you'll get into like a really nice meditative state. Stay there for 5 minutes. So you're hitting sympathetic, you're hitting parasympathetic, and then it allows you to be in a nice meditative state. And this can become a part of like a daily practice that you do.
I'm going to do that tomorrow. That's what I'm going to start my day with. So you answered what I was about to ask. So sympathetic to start, and then parasympathetic to go nice and relaxed, and then almost allowing yourself then just a regular breath, just to be, and then go from there.
Yes. Yeah, that's a very powerful practice. And to answer your second part of the question, typically when clients start to work with me, we'll go into a full breathwork session weekly. So like an hour and a half weekly. I'll do that for about a month, two, and then it might be something every 2 weeks, and then something every month. But if you develop a beautiful practice in life of, at first, you probably need to do some deep work. Like that's just kind of the state of our world. We got to do some deep work. So go into it weekly, like make that an initiative, make it a time in your life that you're doing this deep work. Then it can be something like monthly over time. But the practice that I said before, the 15 minutes, like that's a beautiful thing to be doing each day, because that will bring you back to that similar place. Like you don't need these long, like you don't need to be going and doing ayahuasca once a week. Like it's kind of the same thing. Like at first you might need to take that deep dive in. But then it's like, okay, I go every now and then. It's the same thing, but the presence practice, what I call it, in the morning allows you to bring yourself back there. And then just finding like the best amount of time in between your session, like your full sessions.
Amazing. And for people that want to take a deeper dive into this and to connect with you and to find you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, my Instagram is the best spot for that. It's just Jake_Whan, Whan. And I'm getting my podcast all set up. It's going to be called The Conscious Coach. I'm thinking about changing my Instagram handle to that as well. But yeah, my Instagram is the best spot for that. I do bi-weekly donation-based online sessions. So every other Thursday, I do an online session. So you can tune in from wherever you are in the world, and you can come and experience this. And I would say that's probably the best place to start.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you so much for your time and for being here.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Me too.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Take care, brother.